In a small, quiet town nestled between rolling hills and thick forests, there lived a man who owned a modest grocery shop. His life was simple, perhaps too simple. Day after day, he would rise early, open the shop, and spend his hours selling food and supplies to the townsfolk. This routine had been his life for years. But though the rhythm of his days was steady, his heart was not. Beneath the surface of his calm exterior, the man carried a heavy burden, one that grew with each passing day. He had taken out a significant loan from the king to start his shop. The debt loomed over him like a dark cloud, casting a shadow on his every thought. Despite his hard work, the income from the shop barely covered his daily expenses, let alone the debt he owed. Still, he persevered, believing that with enough time and effort, he would eventually pay off his dues. But life, as it often does, had other plans. One cold, fateful night, as the man lay in bed, he awoke to the smell of smoke. Panic gripped his heart as he rushed outside, only to see his beloved shop engulfed in flames. The fire roared with a ferocity that left no hope of salvation. The townspeople gathered, helplessly watching as the man's livelihood turned to ash. By morning, nothing remained but charred ruins and the bitter sting of loss. As he stood before the remnants of his shop, the man felt the weight of his world collapse. How would he pay the king now? How would he survive? The thought of rebuilding seemed impossible, the debt insurmountable. The man's thoughts grew darker with each passing day. His despair deepened as he realized the full extent of his loss. With no shop, no income, and a debt that would surely crush him, the man saw no way out. He wandered the town, aimless and lost, with a heart so heavy that it pulled him down like an anchor into the depths of despair. The man could no longer see a future, only the painful reality of his present. And so, he began to entertain a thought he had never dared consider before, ending it all down on the edge of town, near a cliff that overlooked the vast, cold sea. The man stood one evening, contemplating the final act that would free him from his suffering. The wind howled around him, a fitting chorus for his sorrow. He closed his eyes, ready to step forward, when a gentle voice called out to him. "Why are you here, my friend, when the world still has so much to offer?" The man turned, startled, to see a figure standing a few paces behind him. Dressed in simple robes, with a calm and serene expression, stood a monk. His presence was both surprising and comforting, like a warm blanket on a frigid night. The man hesitated, unsure whether to speak or remain silent, but the monk's eyes held a kindness that made it impossible to turn away. "What has brought you to this dark place?" the monk asked softly, his voice carrying a wisdom that seemed to cut through the man's despair. The man's resolve crumbled, and with a voice heavy with grief, he told the monk everything about the fire, the debt, and the hopelessness that had driven him to this cliff. The monk listened intently, never interrupting, his gaze steady and compassionate. When the man had finished, the monk nodded slowly, as if absorbing the weight of his words. "My friend," the monk began, "life is full of suffering. This much is true. But it is also full of hope, and sometimes, when all seems lost, it is because something new is about to be found." The man looked at the monk, confused and skeptical. What hope could possibly be left for him? But the monk's eyes held a certainty that the man had not felt in himself for a long time. It was as if the monk could see something in the man that he himself could not. "I cannot change what has happened to you," the monk continued, "but I can show you how to change the way you see it." With these words, the monk extended his hand, offering not just help, but the beginning of a journey that would lead the man to a place he could not yet imagine. The monk's words were like a lifeline, pulling the man back from the brink. He felt a strange comfort in the monk's presence, a sense that perhaps, just perhaps, there was another way. As they walked back to the town together, the monk spoke of life's impermanence, how everything is in constant flux, and how even the darkest night is followed by dawn. The man listened, absorbing the monk's words, though his heart remained heavy with doubt. The days that followed were hard. The man was homeless, penniless, and still drowning in debt. The king's collectors would soon come, demanding repayment. He feared the day they would arrive, knowing he had nothing to give. But each day, the monk returned, offering wisdom, and sometimes just silent company. The monk never pushed, never demanded. He simply sat with the man, helping him find a sliver of peace in his turmoil. One morning, as they sat together near the ruins of the man's shop, the monk handed him a small, worn pouch. The man looked at it curiously. "What is this?" he asked. "This," the monk said, "is something you must keep with you always. It is not for now, but for the moment when you feel you have nothing left to give, when your despair reaches its peak. Only then should you open it." The man frowned. He did not understand what the monk meant, but he took the pouch, grateful for the gesture if nothing else. The monk's presence had become the one thing that anchored him, and he was willing to trust in whatever the monk offered. The days stretched on, and the man's situation did not improve. He could find no work, and the king's debt collectors came, demanding payment. He begged for more time, but their faces were cold, unmoved by his pleas. They gave him a short reprieve, but it was clear that their patience was wearing thin. The man's despair grew. He began to feel that the monk's teachings, though comforting, were just words. His reality was harsh and unyielding, and no amount of wisdom seemed to change that. He felt the weight of the pouch in his pocket, but he resisted the urge to open it, saving it for the moment he truly had nothing left. And then that moment came one evening, after a particularly brutal day of searching for work and being turned away at every door. The man returned to the charred remains of his shop. He sat down among the ashes, feeling the crushing weight of his circumstances. He had nothing, no money, no home, no future. The king's men would return soon, and he knew he could not delay them any longer. It was over. His hand instinctively went to the pouch. He pulled it out, staring at it for a long time. What could possibly be inside that would make any difference now? But he had nothing left to lose. With trembling fingers, he opened the pouch. Inside was a single seed. The man stared at it in disbelief. A seed? That was the monk's great gift? Anger and frustration bubbled up inside him. How could a seed possibly help him now? He felt like throwing it away, hurling it into the forest in a fit of rage. But something stopped him. The monk's words echoed in his mind. Only when your despair reaches its peak. This was that moment. And so, with a heavy sigh, the man decided to plant the seed. He found a small patch of earth near the ruins of his shop and dug a hole. He placed the seed inside, covered it with soil, and then sat back, feeling foolish and more lost than ever. But the next morning, something incredible happened. The man awoke to find a small sprout where he had planted the seed. It was delicate, fragile, but alive. He stared at it in awe, hardly believing his eyes. In the midst of the ashes, in the place where all had been destroyed, something new was growing. It was a tiny thing, almost insignificant, but it filled the man with a spark of hope he hadn't felt in a long time, that he began to care for the sprout, watering it and protecting it from harm. Each day, it grew a little more, and with it, the man's hope grew too. The monk continued to visit, guiding the man in his care of the plant, but also in his care of himself. He taught the man to meditate, to find peace within even when the world outside was chaotic. He spoke of patience, of how life unfolds in its own time, and how we must tend to our inner gardens just as we tend to the plants around us. As the sprout grew into a young plant, the man found himself changing too. He was still poor, still in debt, but the despair that had once gripped him so tightly was loosening its hold. He began to see the world through different eyes. The small joys, the warmth of the sun, the sound of the wind in the trees, the growth of the plant became his solace. He was learning to live in the present, to find beauty in the simple things, and to trust that life, like the seed, would find a way to grow, even in the harshest conditions. Months passed, and the plant continued to grow, becoming a large, healthy tree. It was then that the monk revealed the true nature of the seed he had given the man. This tree, the monk explained, is not just any tree. It is a rare and precious one, known for its ability to bear fruit that is highly valued. But more importantly, it is a symbol of your resilience, of your ability to grow and thrive, even when everything around you has been destroyed. The man looked at the tree, then at the monk, understanding dawning on him. The seed had been a test of his patience, of his ability to nurture hope even when it seemed foolish to do so. And now, that patience was about to be rewarded. Despite the joy the tree brought him, the man's struggles were far from over. The king's collectors returned, more insistent than ever. They demanded payment, threatening to seize what little he had left. The man pleaded for more time, explaining that his circumstances were beginning to change, that he was on the verge of something new. But the collectors were ruthless, their eyes fixed on the immediate gain. They gave him one final warning. If he could not pay by the next full moon, They would take everything from him. The man was terrified. He had worked so hard to rebuild his life, to find some semblance of stability. And now it was all at risk again. He began to doubt himself, wondering if the monk's teachings, the seed, and the tree were truly enough to save him. The pressure mounted, and with it, the old feelings of despair began to creep back in point one night. As the deadline loomed closer, the man sat under the tree, his heart heavy with fear. The monk joined him, sensing his turmoil. The man turned to the monk, his voice tinged with desperation. "Master, I have done everything you taught me. I have been patient, I have nurtured hope, I have cared for this tree. But now, it seems that none of it will matter. The king's men will come, and they will take everything from me. What should I do?" The monk looked at the man with deep compassion. "You have indeed done all that I have asked and more, but there is one more lesson you must learn." The man listened intently, eager for any wisdom that could save him. "You must learn to let go," the monk said softly. "You have nurtured this tree with love and care, just as you have nurtured your own spirit. But you must understand that life is not about clinging to what we have built. It is about trusting in the process, even when the outcome is uncertain. You must be willing to let go of your fear, your attachment to this tree, and your need for control. Only then will you truly be free." The man was silent, pondering the monk's words. Letting go was the last thing he wanted to do. He had lost so much already, and the thought of losing more was unbearable. But he also knew that the monk had never led him astray. If there was one thing he had learned, it was to trust the monk's wisdom. And so, with a heavy heart, the man resolved to let go of his fear. He would face whatever came with courage, knowing that he had done his best. He would not cling to the tree, to the hope it represented, or to the fear of losing it all. He would simply be, and trust that life would unfold as it was meant to. As the day of the full moon approached, the man found himself at peace for the first time in a long while. He had let go of his fear, his anxiety, and his attachment to the outcome. He continued to care for the tree, but now he did so with a light heart, knowing that whatever happened, he had already gained something far more valuable than money or possessions. Inner peace. On the night of the full moon, the king's collectors arrived, as they had promised. The man met them at the edge of his property, his heart steady, his mind calm. He knew they would take everything, but he was ready. He had accepted his fate. But just as the collectors began to move towards the tree, something extraordinary happened. The tree, which had grown strong and tall under the man's care, began to bear fruit. Not just any fruit, but large, golden fruits that shone brightly in the moonlight. The collectors, stunned by the sight, stopped in their tracks. "What is this?" one of them muttered, awestruck. The man himself was speechless. He had not expected this, not in his wildest dreams. The fruits were unlike anything he had ever seen, beautiful and radiant, as if touched by some divine power. The collectors, realizing the value of the fruit, immediately seized it, but not before the man could claim a small portion. They left quickly, eager to present the fruits to the king, hoping to gain favor. The man watched them go, still in a state of shock, but with a heart full of gratitude that he returned to the tree, marveling at what had just happened. The monk appeared beside him, a gentle smile on his face. "You see, my friend," the monk said, "the fruit of your patience and care has come, not a moment too soon, not a moment too late. You let go, and in doing so, you allowed life to give you exactly what you needed." The man fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. He had been saved, not by his own efforts alone, but by the process he had learned to trust. The monk had been right all along. Life had its own timing, its own way of working things out, if only one had the patience and courage to see it through. The man's life changed dramatically after that night. The golden fruits were worth more than he could have ever imagined. He was able to pay off his debt to the king, with plenty left over to rebuild his life. The tree continued to bear fruit, providing him with a steady income that allowed him to live comfortably, without fear of poverty or debt. But more importantly, the man had changed. He was no longer the desperate, despairing soul who had once stood on the edge of a cliff, ready to end it all. He had learned the power of patience, the importance of mindset, and the strength that comes from letting go of fear and trusting in life's process. That he sought out the monk to thank him. But the monk, true to his nature, had already moved on, leaving only his teachings and the legacy of the tree behind. The man understood that the monk had given him not just the gift of the seed, but the gift of a new life, a life grounded in wisdom and peace. The town, once quiet and unremarkable, became known for the man's tree, drawing visitors from far and wide who marveled at its golden fruit. The man, once a humble shopkeeper, was now a respected figure, known for his kindness, his wisdom, and the incredible story of his transformation. But despite his newfound prosperity, the man never forgot the lessons he had learned. He continued to live simply, appreciating the small things, and always ready to share his story with those who found themselves lost and in despair. He became a beacon of hope in the town, a living testament to the power of patience, perseverance, and faith in the unseen forces that guide our lives. And so, the man's life came full circle. From the ashes of his shop to the golden fruits of his tree, he had journeyed through darkness and despair to find light and hope. He had discovered that true wealth is not in money or possessions, but in the peace that comes from within, a peace that can weather any storm, survive any fire, and bloom in the most unexpected places. The man's journey is a powerful reminder that even in our darkest moments, there is a path forward if we have the courage to seek it. The teachings of the monk, though simple, carried a profound truth. Life is a cycle of growth, decay, and renewal. We must learn to let go of our fears, our attachments, and our need for control, and instead trust in the process of life. For those who are struggling, who feel lost or overwhelmed, the story of the man and the monk offers a message of hope. It shows us that no matter how dire our circumstances may seem, there is always a way forward, a way to find peace and prosperity, if only we have the patience to wait for it, the wisdom to recognize it, and the courage to embrace it. So, if you find yourself in a place of despair, remember the man, the monk, and the tree. Remember that even in the ashes of what once was, something new and beautiful can grow. And when it does, it will bear fruit that is sweeter and more precious than you could have ever imagined. If this story has touched you, if it has brought you hope or inspiration, please subscribe to our channel, like this video, and share it with others who might need to hear this message. Together, we can spread the seeds of hope and help others find their way out of the darkness.